Hello and welcome to the Building Sociology Poddy, where we talk about better buildings to live and breathe in. My name is Jess Kismet and I am your host. Today I am joined by two gentlemen who have actually already been guests on the show. And they were two of the top rating episodes, if you don't mind. Clarence McAllister from episode 12 and Sean Buchanan from episode 16. So if you haven't already heard those episodes, go back and have a listen because you will learn a ton. These two blokes are from Tasmania and they are doing so much work to drag the Australian building industry forward, and they are doing it not just by sharing their amazing knowledge. If you haven't seen Sean's Instagram, I will link it in the show notes. He shares tons of on-site expertise. They are also doing that with real-world data. These guys have been conducting experiments on some of their projects, playing around with gadgets and sensors, and we're here to find out what they have learned. Hey guys.
Hello, Jess.
Hello, how you going?
Good. So let's get into what you guys have been doing. You are both pretty deep into the monitoring space. I know, Clarence, you've been doing this for years. Sean, you're focused on new builds, and Clarence, you've been doing a bit of work in the existing building space. So let's go into a little bit about what you're both learning from the data that you're collecting and the common issues that you're finding. Sean, let's start with you.
So the most recent sensor install that we've done has been in a flat roof, checking the moisture content of the battens, because we know that flat roofs aren't all that good at drying themselves out. So we've got a new
the
sensor up in there.
Like the actual battens above the membrane?
Yeah, battens above the Adhero. We're using, like ProClimate Adhero membrane on our flat roofs. So just like having a look and seeing how wet the battens get, how much they dry out. Because I'm interested in this, like the whole treated pine conversation's getting thrown around a little bit. So I'm just interested in seeing my own data on, like, do we need to be putting more chemically treated timber into our buildings, or is the stuff that we got okay? Because I'm still a bit on the fence about that. So I have to see for myself. I can't just take someone's word for it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, getting nerdy. Love it. So what have you found? Have the battens been
haven't taken the reading
what pitch
yet.
roof are you talking about?
It is 5 degrees. 5 degrees in a coastal area.
Yeah.
So
and you're in Tasmania, so climate zone 7?
Yeah. Climate zone 7, yeah.
Yep.
Haven't taken any readings from the sensor yet. These are a different type of sensor. I got them from Cam Munro. You actually have to be in that, like that. We could set it up to be connected to the internet and like pull the data that way, but it'd be a bit more equipment. So we just have to go there and take, like, it's a Bluetooth connection. So go there, connect the phone, pull the data. I haven't done that yet, but probably do that this afternoon because it's been covered up for a little while now. So it'd be good to see what's happening. So I'll be happy to share that with you once I've got that info.
Yeah, well, by the time this episode gets released, this won't be aired for a bit. We'll probably have some data, so I can link that in the show notes when you have it.
That'll be cool. And then the other sensor we installed was just cold roof, pretty steep pitch, like 28 degree pitch, but it was in a house with Intello at the ceiling and on the walls. So just interested to see with our Intel and HRV what that's doing to the truss framing, being that there should be a reduced vapor drive through the ceiling and into that cold roof space. So can we go with an unvented cold roof if we have Intello and a HRV? That's my question. Because I think, I don't know, venting them's the answer. I'm not sure it's effective as what we think it is.
Well, venting introduces more moisture as well as expels moisture. So it's I agree with you.
If your external conditions are like cold and humid and you're venting with that, like your clothes don't dry on the line real quick when it's in winter. So, I don't know, that's my oversimplification of that.
Yeah. So Clarence, you've got a bit of roof data, don't you?
Bits and pieces. Look, I've got data from all sorts of places, and look, what Sean says is very, very interesting. So when we're looking at, particularly in coastal zones, when we're looking about introducing air in coastal zones that might already have a very high humidity, it's a far more complicated exercise than low humidity air that's being introduced, and the devil really is in the detail. And I do a lot of the monitoring, as you said, on existing builds, and it's interesting that Sean and I have had several conversations about this, and Mark Dewsbury and I do a lot of training, and whenever we get questions after the training, it's never the simple sort of 22-degree pitch, well ventilated, dark coloured roof,
Mm.
blah blah. It's always the complicated questions, but there's this myth that we have all the answers in building science, which we don't. And when you start talking about these funky designs and particular
Mm.
microclimates, we just don't have the data. And if someone is doing a high risk, flat pitch roof, barrel rated, light coloured, poor ventilation, PVs on the roof, et cetera, how that roof actually behaves in reality, there are a lot of question marks around it. And I'm a big believer that if you have a roof that has a lot of question marks, or any assembly that has a lot of question marks, the cost of monitoring now is so inexpensive. And as a risk management tool, as a quality assurance tool, as far as you getting to understand how the buildings work, it's a no-brainer. And compared to 20 years ago, and I used to work in a different field of science 20 years ago, you used to have to get things that were big boxes and data loggers and power supplies and monitors, and then go back and climb up in the roof. And these days, it's all done with monitors that you can purchase for a few $100s. And depending on the setup, that they do it remotely. And it's the improvement in technology and ability that gives us to understand our buildings is just phenomenal.
Yeah, totally. And they're only about this big. And you just stick them
I think-
on.
Oh, look, I've got one here for the people who are actually watching, and that's the tether one. Mine have all got names.
Henry.
Oh, look, they all have names, because if I have A, B,
G'day,
C, D,
Henry.
and L, I forget them. So they're called Arthur and Barry and Charlene, whatever. That's Henry. But that's one big. That's one of the bigger ones, so you can see how big it is. And they retail for $200-ish. Now, just to be clear, I'm not on the payroll of Tether. It's just that they happen to suit me, and I don't think Sean's on the payroll of the other one. So it's not an advertising exercise here. It's just what works.
Yeah, we'll get into the different types of monitors at the end of the show. We'll definitely get across what types of monitors that you guys are using. We'll
Brilliant.
leave that to last so people can listen to all of this first and get to that bit at the end. So you guys are monitoring, like Sean, you're in new builds, Clarence, you're in existing builds. It's important to monitor both new and existing. Why is it important in those two different contexts, Clarence?
Mm.
We just don't have the information about how buildings are behaving. And if you're doing a woofie analysis, and I'm sure you'll be able to pull up some of the temperature and humidity things of the woofie analysis. I don't have one handy, but they have a top limit of humidity and bottom limit of humidity, a top limit of temperature and a bottom limit of temperature, where in theory the mechanical services heat recovery should kick in and keep those within a particular band. But that happens in a passive house. In a modern house, is that happening? We don't know, but when we're talking about subfloor spaces and roofs in existing buildings, what those parameters are, even a lot of the experts in the field in Australia would not be able to tell you what's the average humidity, how often is it reaching dew point, what are the fluctuations, what are the averages, and it's a fascinating area because we can get all this data and understand how buildings work. Interestingly, many years ago, I bought myself a thermal camera and would go around looking at things with a thermal camera. And after a while of doing that, you almost get a bit of a sixth sense of where the cold points are going to be and what it's going to look like before you even get the thermal camera out. And anyone who's used a thermal camera for any length of time would understand that. And the monitors are a bit the same. You can almost put a monitor into whatever tile roof, X degrees, particular climate zone, particular colour, particular building, and you'll almost have a bit of an idea in your head what that's going to be like before you even get there. And that's only through experience. So it gives you that bit of a sixth sense of how the buildings are working. And some of the stuff I've found is really, A, very interesting, but B, can be very scary. And this business of people saying, Australian houses are crap and we're living in tents, etc. I'll get onto the stuff about subfloors later on, and you don't want to be a fearmonger, but the houses are pretty average. A lot of existing building stock, and using the monitors instead of saying that's my opinion or Sean's opinion, you can verify that. But then the flip side with what Sean's doing. Is the house that Sean's building, is this worth it to the client? Does it make a difference? Is it healthy? Tick, tick, tick. That can be verified. And that's a really good selling point and quality control method for new builds as well.
Yeah, you're one of the few builders in Australia who can actually say this works or it doesn't work based
Mm,
on actual data. We were talking off air
yeah.
before about the DTS requirements in the code for membranes, and you use this membrane in that climate zone and this membrane in that climate zone, and that gets you the green tick for approval under the building code. But that there are so many things, so many variables around workmanship and product selection that cannot be taken into account. And the only way you can do that is literally by monitoring on site and measuring.
And like Clarence said, the barrier to entry is pretty low. You just obviously got to have some sort of interest in it to go and spend the money to buy the sensor, but it's costing you a couple $100. And just the materials that we're building out of now are just crap. Like the pine is not good. It doesn't stand up to the moisture. So then, yeah, like it's like a quality assurance for me as well. Like to know that I'm going to build a house and not get sued because it's rotted out. Like monitoring is an early warning system. It's great to get all the data and everything, but yeah, an early warning system to be like, okay, something's happening in here. We need to go back and take a look at that because we're seeing these elevated humidity levels or moisture content levels over a consistent period of time. What's going on there? Like maybe it's a leak in the roof or something like that. There's just like what you get for doing it. There's a heap of pros and there's not really too many cons. Maybe you'll get some anxiety. That's if you like, yeah, if you start to see things that you're not really liking, but at least you know, knowing's half the battle, right?
Yeah. So what are you actually monitoring?
Temperature and humidity.
You said moisture content
And
before, so you're
yeah,
measuring
that's in
temperature and
the,
humidity at the air, but you're also
yeah,
measuring moisture content of the timber.
on the new sensors that we're actually screwing into the pine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're measuring the moisture content of the timber, but I haven't pulled those reports yet. So,
Right. Okay. All right. So
yeah.
watch this space for that data. Hopefully it'll be ready
Mm,
by the time this goes to air.
Can I just add something there as well, Jess, is that there are a lot of these builds where there's absolutely a possibility that there will be a problem. Now, the thing is, if you put a sensor in there and you go, okay, we've got a problem, if you can address that problem in the first 12 to 18 months, that's going to
mm,
be because there's catastrophic damage. And so let's say you've got a wall, roof, whatever, with a moisture problem, and you can say, okay, we're getting a mould risk, we're getting very high humidities, consistently for the first couple of seasons. Well, you're in a position to go back and rework that while the materials are still
mm,
salvageable. If that goes to 5 or 7 years, the damage, instead of being a
mm,
$10,000 or $20,000 fix, is going to be a $100,000 or $200,000 fix. And the timing is everything, because often with the mould and the deterioration, that it'll get through a season or two. Once it's 4 or 5 or 7 seasons, game over, or very
Yeah, I
difficult
mm,
think
to repair.
since our conversation last year, Clarence, I've actually been advising people if they want to do a certain roof, they want to do it this way or that way, and it's not, best practice, it's not recommended, but they're cutting costs or they've got a roof pitch they really want to achieve because of the
Mm.
client or heights or whatever reason, of whatever restrictions there are in their design. If they can't use the best practice methodologies in their roof space, just like I say, if your house is too airtight, put a relative humidity and CO2 monitor inside your living space. I say, if you're not sure and you can't design or build your roof in the best practice way, stick a monitor up there. Since our conversation, I've been actually
mm,
telling people to do that. I don't know if anyone has actually done it, but if you, as
mm,
you say, you monitor the first winter and even the second winter and see what comes out.
mm,
That's right. And look, in the remedial space as well, like, how often do you go to a doctor and you have a complex medical condition with your doctor, and the doctor says, here's the medicine, take it, run along, and I'll never see you again? There's always some follow up. And so I'm a big believer that
mm,
in the remedial space, you say, you know, this is what I believe to be the best fix, but there needs to be monitoring, as a quality control, but then in exactly the same way, the doctor said, take your medicine and we'll check in either in 3 or 6 months, see how it's going, to check it's going all right. Because there was a building physics conference a few years ago, and I think the guy's name was Paul Raymer from memory, an American guy, and he said, yeah, building physics is an incredibly complicated area, and you can have all the best brains there, but you will never have every single base covered on every single occasion, especially in some of
No.
these complex situations. And this is like the checkup from the doctor after you've had the medication. And the thing is,
mm,
when you're talking about it, you could put enough monitors in a house for under $1,000 in the bigger picture for $1,000, like taking off a few roof sheets and checking moisture content in a roof a couple of times
Mm.
is $1,000. And this can just be done
Yeah.
in the comfort of your own home. The checkup's done in the comfort of your own
Mm.
home or on your phone. Um,
What do you think, Clarence, too, about like there's the upfront investment, say you do 5 sensors, and then does the investment, do you think it comes down because you can pull sensors out once you've got, like, how long do you think you need a monitor for before you've got enough data? I know
oh,
that's
I'd
probably a
say
bit of a hard question.
2 or 3 years max.
It's a good
But
question.
the other thing I
Yeah.
always say is I get an electrician to come along and put a couple of PowerPoints in. There's $250, you know.
And
Um,
just leave it there.
and
Yeah.
when you, and
Yeah.
yeah, but a couple of years, correct. And look, we'll get onto that later
Yeah.
with battery life. But and again, if you come back to the building physics, that within 2 or 3 years, if there is a problem, that there should at least be some sign of that problem.
Mm. Yeah.
But it doesn't need to go for
Yeah.
10 years. Let's put it that way.
And then are you finding in the restoration space, because you've got, like, are you generally dealing with houses that have got hardwood framing? So there's a whole lot more buffer and robustness there in the materials, like as opposed to a new build. 9 times out of 10, it's pine framing, maybe LVL. And I just don't think it's got the same resilience as what
Oh,
old hardwood timber does.
absolutely, 100%,
Mm.
100%.
Do you know up in the tropics they use hardwood still? Makes sense, right?
Really?
But they actually still
Yeah.
use hardwood. Yep.
Mm.
Yep. I didn't think anyone still used hardwood.
Yeah. I mean, you can still get it. It's pretty dear. Like, building's expensive already, and then you go to a hardwood frame.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
for
would be
sure.
interesting to know what the reason is behind that, whether it's a supply issue or a termite issue or a bit of
No, it's
all of the
moisture.
above.
Yeah,
Yep,
it's just
exactly.
moisture termites they've
Yep,
got like up there. It's just brutal.
absolutely is. Yep, yep. Oh, yep.
Yep.
Mm.
So what do you guys reckon? Like you guys, obviously, like sometimes I think we sit in our own little bubbles and we get so used to doing what we do that we forget that the rest of the world isn't doing the same thing. And I mean, as I said, Sean, Clarence, you guys are probably one of the only 2 builders actively and regularly monitoring your buildings. Do you think that we should be moving towards some sort of standardized cavity monitoring, especially now that the vented and drained cavity is being talked about in the 2025 building code?
Mm.
And, you know, Sean, you were talking about treated and non-treated battens. And I saw a video last week of some horribly, horribly deteriorated battens due to really poor window detailing.
Mm.
That could have been flagged. The house was only 3 years old. And
Yeah.
the estimation from the person I was talking to was $1 million repair bill. It was an $8.5 million house that was only 3 years old with a $1 million repair bill. Shocking,
Oh.
shocking detailing errors that could potentially send this builder broke.
Mm.
But if this had been, if he'd had, you know, one of your moisture content monitors stuck to one of his battens, this would have been flagged much, much sooner. So, you know, ideal world, what do you guys think about standardized monitoring in cavities? Or is it just too complex?
I think it would be hard to get all builders on board, but what I would like to see is a certain amount of people represented in each state. Like, I would certainly volunteer to sign up for that, to be able to provide data back to the NCC or the Building Codes Board or whatever,
Yep.
to just like prove what they're writing in is like working or not working. Yeah, because
Yeah, I'd love to
I
know
think,
how they come up with their rules and regulations.
Mm.
Because I don't think any of
yeah,
it's based on real world data. It's all based on, I don't know, best guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, look, on that point, I think that for, in inverted commas, low risk builds and, that there's all this conjecture over what's low risk, but there are some that are relatively low risk. I think it would be over the top to suggest that, but then there are certain ones where you're getting into riskier builds that,
Mm.
I think it's a very good idea, and I can't say too much because I don't want to spill the beans, but I was speaking to a contractor who does a lot of high-end houses for a lot of multi-million-dollar houses in a particular part of New South Wales, and he was telling me about some of he's done the training, and he telling me about some of the moisture issues in these buildings that are, we're talking, uh, you know, multi-million-dollar buildings that are a couple of years old with moisture issues that are just absolutely off the dial. And
Yeah.
I said to him, look, if you go along as the contractor and tell them, they won't believe you, but if you put one of these monitors up in the roof and get anyone who's got any knowledge of building science, and they'll tell you pretty quick, um, you can fix it now for a couple of $100,000, or you can have a multi-million-dollar house that's falling down in 5 years. Um, and
Well,
when you've
that's
got that
exactly what's
Mm.
happened
data,
to this client. Like, I saw it with my own eyes. You know, you hear about all these horror stories, but to see it with my own eyes was quite frightening. I'm
and
not
when
even
you've
a
got the
builder, and I was
data
like,
there,
sheesh.
when you've got the data there, it's a very easy sell. And when I say sell, that's not about money for Sean or I or someone else, a contractor. That's about making the house a healthy place to live. And there was one in
Mm.
particular a few months ago, and I'll pull up the screen and share it in a minute. I'll just pull this one up, and these were some people who were concerned about the humidity in the building, and that they'd been told 7 different things by 7 different people of what they had to do. And I said to them, "Have you had any monitoring done of the building?" And they had no idea what I was talking about. I'm pulling this up now, and anyway, so I put a meter in the subfloor, a meter in the living area, and a meter in the roof space. And the meter in the subfloor was sitting at 100% humidity,
Wow.
probably 80% of the time. Then it becomes very easy to explain to those people. Like I said, it's not about drumming up business. It's about um, giving people some useful information that then they can go, okay, well, we've got 100% humidity in the subfloor. You don't need to be a building scientist to work out we've got a problem with subfloor ventilation. I'll pull that
Hmm.
up for you.
Mm.
And it's not coming up at the moment. I'm sorry. Yep.
That's all
Yes.
right.
And
So
what's the
giving that information to validate the instead of just being my opinion or Sean's opinion or anybody else's opinion, that the hard data makes it very hard to dispute that there's a problem.
So what was the trigger? Sorry, maybe I missed what you said, Clarence. What was the trigger for them coming to you and for you putting monitors in their subfloor? And is it
Well,
common to find 100% relative humidity in a subfloor in your climate?
that's the worst I've ever seen. Yeah, so they came to me. They said, we have a condensation problem in the house. We've been told we need an air transfer system. We've been told we need ventilation. We've been told we need this. We've been
Right.
told we need to, yeah. And that had multiple different people telling them multiple different things, all of which were
Mm.
partially correct, but none of which covered the whole range of what happened and what was happening and what needed to be addressed. So the subfloor had 100% humidity at least 80% of the time. One of the bedrooms was getting to 2,500 parts per million, which is the maximum should be around the 800 parts per million, very generally speaking. So it was getting
Carbon
to
dioxide.
2,000 parts per million, yeah, multiple times in a week. And the roof wasn't too bad. So again, as far as them saying, what do we need to do? Well, straight away, you've got a moisture problem in your subfloor and you've got a ventilation problem in your habitable space. The roof isn't too
Yeah.
bad. So straight away, we can focus on where we've got to spend our resources, what
Yeah.
the risk areas are, rather than just uh, having stabs in the dark.
It's time for a quick sponsor shout out. Today's episode of the Building Sciology Poddy is proudly brought to you by our amazing sponsors, Enduro Builders and Climasure. A huge thank you to these incredible businesses for supporting the podcast and helping us spread the word about better buildings to live and breathe in. Your support makes this podcast possible. Please head over to their websites and follow their social pages.
Hey, Clarence, can I just ask a question about that subfloor? And
But be careful.
was it
That's
just
a whole can of worms.
No, that's all good. Well, they're a pain in the ass. So, and was it in relation to anything to do with the outside landscaping, or was it purely just there's not enough vents and not in the right locations? Because you see it all the time. You got like these old houses with subfloor vents, and then they come and put a concrete path around the house, cover up all the ventilation,
Yeah,
or
it was
bring up the landscape heights and all that sort of stuff.
in
Yeah,
that case. It was just not enough subfloor ventilation.
yeah.
But what you say, I've seen that many times where someone's done something silly and like you say, like landscaping, like paths, like
Mm.
whatever, and what was once okay is no longer okay. Absolutely, yeah, that's relatively common. Yeah.
Mm.
Is it
Especially
sometimes a
when they
groundwater
landscape.
issue?
Oh,
I feel
look,
like I feel like
but
I feel like
this,
groundwater and moisture in the ground has got a lot to do with this. Because where is the moisture coming from?
oh, absolutely, and this is the thing that I find subfloors is one of my pet things, and the reason it's one of my pet things is if you look at any material within a building, plaster, concrete, blah blah blah, anything above the floor level, more or less, there's a finite amount of moisture that can be held within that building element. But if you're talking about, and the more you heat it up, eventually it will all desorb from the material in the absence of moisture. Eventually, everything will dry out. But if you've got a moist subfloor, you're talking the dirt under a bearers and joist floor, no matter how much you heat that up, there is still going to be more moisture coming through. It's effectively an infinite amount of moisture, no matter
Mm.
how much ventilation, how much heating. And this is the other fascinating thing I've found, and I hope we're not getting too far off topic, but I've found that even subfloors that are ventilated to National Construction Code, the mould risk and humidity in those subfloors is often completely unacceptable. Now,
Mhm.
then if we come back to air tightness in a building, we look at air tightness as an issue to do with keeping the conditioned space comfortable. But if we're looking at air tightness between the subfloor, which is essentially a mould factory, and a conditioned space, which we believe to be dry, comfortable, blah, 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 and we've got this essentially a mould factory under the floor, and then the stack effect of the mould coming up into the building, we can have a building conditioned space which theoretically ticks all the boxes, but we're living on top of a mould factory which is very, very poorly sealed underneath our conditioned space. Where's that take us? And again, if you speak to most people in the building industry, even building scientists, and say, what's the mould risk or such and such under a subfloor? And they go, oh, we think it's such and such, but how much data is there out there? Not much.
Do you
But the
think,
ability to get that is it's very easy data to get.
if I could just ask a dumb question, do you reckon we should put black wrap, like a vapor barrier down when we do the subfloor on top of the dirt? Is that going to make any sort of meaningful difference?
I reckon they
That-
do in the US.
Yeah, and look, that's a whole other that's something I'm playing around with at the moment. And look, it's and the other thing is when we've got these, this is the other interesting thing. You think of a roof space, and even though it can get a considerable amount of moisture in it, we've got this drying capacity because up high gets but its subfloor never gets the sun on it. So. And the other interesting thing I've found with the building monitoring is even if you put one of these monitors outside on the south side of the building, it will have mould risk in the ambient air on the outside of a building on the south side. So what we're saying is the atmospheric conditions as they are on the south side of the building are situations where mould risk is not appropriate. So where do we go from there? Do we start heating our subfloors? Do we start putting black wrap down? And there's a huge lack of information there, and it's problematic. And as you've mentioned before, like back in the olden days, not from New South Wales, and they used to, have the termite barriers and then cover everything in creosote. And now we've gone from hardwood with creosote to regrowth radiata, quickly grown radiata pine, and it's a completely different ballgame.
What's creosote?
Creosote's it's toxic black tarry stuff that is it's probably illegal these days. It's like a black coal tar sort of stuff. And back in the old days, they used to slap it everywhere because that would kill anything. And yeah.
What? Slap it on what? On timber?
On timber, correct. Yes, it was a timber
right.
treatment, just like
a treatment. Okay.
a slap on, a brush on sort of black.
Like literally painted on.
Correct. Yes. And creosote, hardwood, subfloor all went hand in hand. And these days we've got fast growing radiata pine in our subfloors. And as Sean said, completely different ballgame.
Yeah, it just doesn't hold up to the moisture, does it?
What was that, Sean?
Oh, there's just pine. Once you start looking into radiata pine, you just realise it's just pretty shit.
Yeah, I learn a lot from.
Obviously, we're building out because it's cost effective, right? But to do that, to maintain that cost effective and not to incur a cost of pulling it down and doing it all again, we really need to make sure we're getting the buildings like weather tight.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Mm.
pretty simple. Keep the water out, keep the vapor out, ventilate inside of that. And that's building science 101 right there. So, has anything that you found in any of your data, I mean, what you said, Clarence, about 100% relative humidity in the subfloor, that's pretty shocking and that's pretty alarming and that needs to be addressed immediately. Is there anything that you found, Sean, that was a surprise to you?
Not that it should be a surprise, but I guess you're just seeing things that you know occur, like black roof gets hot in a black
hot?
roof.
And you're in
Like up to
Tasmania,
80
so
degrees.
there are a lot hotter
Yeah.
places in Australia.
Yeah, I think it was getting
So
up
if
to
your
like
roof's
80
getting hot-
degrees or something like that.
80.
Yeah, just trying to pull up the data from the sensor now. But yeah, and then I guess surprisingly, that was like a flat roof. Yeah, low pitch, really poorly ventilated, like box gutters, parapet ventilation, which I'm skeptical as to how effective that ventilation would be.
Was that a roof that you built? Or was that an existing home?
Nah, the one that we've built.
So you built that and it was a flat roof. So it had the membrane, above sheathing ventilation, all that jazz. And your temperature monitor was above the membrane in the cavity space. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, because it was a cold roof. So yeah, it was above the insulation on the side of the trusses, 2 degree pitch.
Above the, hang on. No. So it was below the membrane. Sorry. It was actually in the
below
roof
the
space.
membrane.
Yep. So you had insulation at the ceiling.
Yep. And then like 2 degree
ceiling,
pitch.
2 degree pitch, but you had a void in there still.
Yeah. Box gutter at the end with E vents and then like trying to exhaust vent out of the parapet. And like that was showing on the sensor instances where we'd have like condensation. I think that sensor's been up there for about 2, maybe 3 years. And it's all dry as, like bone dry. So dry. Even around the steelwork and that, where the steelwork popped up above the ceiling line, I would have expected to see like water marking around the plaster where the steel beams and that were, but there's nothing. Like, yeah, really dry. So
Sean sleeps at
that surprised me. I was like, what? For a little while anyway.
Except for the baby that's at home.
Yeah. Oh no. I've never slept better. I know it annoys people saying that, but we've got the dream baby.
Oh, you got lucky.
Yeah.
How about you, Clarence? Wait, Clarence, have you found anything shocking or interesting in your data?
Look, I suppose the answer to that question is, you know how some people stay up at night and they look at, I don't know, what do they look at, YouTube or Instagram or whatever. Well, sometimes I'll be up late at night. I wonder what's going on in that roof there, and it can become a bit of a sort of, I wonder how that house is going. Now this is a really interesting one. I'll just pull this one up here, right? I'll just pull this one up here. Now this is a house which had a moisture problem. I'm just going to share my screen. This had a moisture problem. It had a subfloor moisture problem. Now, this is last year between October and December, and this is a subfloor that is ventilated to National Construction Code requirements. So 6,000 square millimetres of ventilation per linear metre, and this is the mould risk that we're getting in through the first part of summer. Okay, so we're getting up into the red zone. So,
all right, we can't see that, Clarence. Have you shared your screen properly?
Share screen. I'll share that. I
want to see this.
Yeah. Turn it F. Yep. So, can you see that there? Can you see that screen?
Something's popping up.
Yep. I can see it.
Okay, so this is a house which had a moisture problem, ventilated the NCC requirements. And here we are. This is the mould risk here. So green is okay. Orange is like a traffic light. You know, the orange not so good and the red's bad. And so this is a subfloor ventilated to National Construction Code requirements in the middle of summer. So again, we've got mould created in significant amounts in the subfloor. This is when it's ventilated to the NCT requirements. So
And is
look,
that based on just the relative humidity and temperature down there?
yes. So what it is, you've got the humidity. That's the humidity there, and this tether one has got now. It's actually got the mould risk built into as a post-processing thing, similar to what Whoopi has. So to be able to look at these and actually see the relationship between temperature, humidity, mould risk, and how it changes. And it's not always what you would expect. And so up here it's showing that's high risk 81% of the time, mid risk 18% of the time. So
Yeah, wow. And that's
that's
across the
not
course of a whole year, Clarence?
no, that's a 3 month. That's
3 months.
start of October to the end of December. That's just what I happened to pull up there. But that's just
And
an
80% of
interesting.
that time is a high risk.
Look, where does it say that? But look, well,
Is that
look,
what you said? When your little
a
pie
significant
your
amount
little
of
graph
time
up
is
the
high
top.
risk. I could do the numbers on it, but correct. Yes, from that one, correct. Based on that, that's right. And look at the other thing too. Each sensor sort of platform has slightly different sort of pros and cons, so depending on what you're using, as far as connectivity, as far as data, as far as how much processing, as far as all sorts of things. So, and look. The tether is particularly useful for what I do, but I've also had a bit of a dabble with the Aranet one, which is very good as well. So, look, I will show this other one because can we pull this up? There was another study which a colleague of mine did regarding, I'll just see if this one will pull up. Does that one pull up there or not? Can you see that? If not, I'll have to.
You've
Just
stopped
got your
sharing?
pretty face.
No, okay. Well, look, I'll put that up so you can put it on the to the people watching. But this guy, his daughter did a study of 3 different buildings that had kids in bedroom, and the door open, door closed, window open, window closed, different scenarios in a very structured process. And the bottom line was there was no way without supplementary heating that you could keep the buildings, the bedrooms within the NCC requirement, not even close, to the point where the carbon dioxide was getting above 3,000 parts per million, the temperature's getting down to like 11 degrees in all these existing houses, some old, some new, not all old houses. And again, so when we say Australian houses are like tents, well, the data would show that that's not that far from the truth when we're talking about 3,500 parts per million of carbon dioxide, when it should be around 800 parts per million, and bedroom temperatures like around 13 degrees.
It's too cold.
That's well outside what we should be building our houses to and what we should be living in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That's not healthy or peaceful.
Yeah, I need to correct my temp max. I'm just looking at it now. So, oh no, I've lost it. I think it got up to 50 degrees.
Okay.
So, yes. Oh.
Not 80.
Sorry, I had it all mapped out there. Yeah, not 80, 50. Where? The tether, though, is like really good sensor. I've used some other ones, but like when you're looking at when you log in and you're looking at that heads up display like Clarence had, yeah, it's really awesome. So max temp, this is over 3 months, max temperature 53.03, minimum temperature 5.38 degrees, and an average of 22.34.
Yeah, right.
Balmy up there.
Yeah. I think Proclimate did some studies of their years ago in roof spaces, and they clock temperatures up to about 80 degrees in Sydney.
Yeah. And we haven't really, in Tassie, we haven't really had a hot summer down here. It's been pretty mild. Like we've had a few hot days recently, but yeah, it hasn't been like a super hot summer this year.
So a common condensation control retrofit in Tasmania is to draw dry air in inverted commas from the roof space. But many homes are hitting 100% relative humidity in the roof space in winter. So does that retrofit strategy make sense? Like, what are the risks here, and how should homeowners be addressing this or attacking this problem?
Well, you're not always ventilating
that,
dry air. That's my comments on it, really. Like, it depends on the external conditions. It's like, yeah, ventilation is the answer sometimes, but when the external conditions aren't good to vent with, you can actually make things worse.
Totally.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Clarence?
Oh, no, look, it's, I'll pull up some data here and share the screen. Now,
But we only
this
know
is,
these roof spaces are
this
hitting
was actually
100%
a
relative
house
humidity because
with,
you guys are monitoring them. Otherwise, how else would we know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you have this data. This data is not widely
look,
available.
oh, look, and there's all
Well, it's like
these,
with the blower door.
there's all these, yep. So I'll pull this one up here. Now I'm going to share my screen. Um,
Okay.
Now, where are we here? I'll share the screen now. So this was a house in Launceston, and and it it's not a particularly high mold risk. It's only sitting in the lower band of the mold risk. But this is a dark coloured, like a ironstone or something coloured roof, 30-degree
Yep.
pitch gable ends with weatherboards on it. So theoretically, one would think, yeah, low risk roof. But
Yeah.
if you have a look here, right, it's getting 100% humidity. Can you see that?
Mhm.
100% humidity, right? And that's been reached 14 times in 2 months. So 14 times in 2 months, that roof has been actually actively condensing on the
Saturated.
underside of the roof 14 times
Yeah.
in 2 months. And so it said, "Oh, what we'll do is we'll draw this, in inverted commas, warm, dry air from the roof space into as some makeup air, or it's brought in as a percentage of the air in the system as warm dry air from the roof space." And it's like, well, no, it's not warm dry air. It's got 100% humidity. It doesn't get any wetter than that. So look, it's, and again, there are these assumptions about all these systems, which may or may not be true. But again, as soon as we put the sensors in there, we can say, okay, we have a problem. And another
Yeah.
interesting one, some people I do some work for, and they lived in Europe for several years. So they've come back with a very European mindset as far as building health is concerned. And there was an issue with one of their children, and they wanted to check if there was anything in the building. And so I put some meters in there and checked all the metrics, and everything got a pretty good tick. So straight away we can say, okay, we know that the conditions in this room are pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. So let's focus your energy on, dealing with the health problem rather than worrying about the building. And so for
Mm.
that, as a parent,
Yeah.
to say, okay, well, we can get these metrics and say what the carbon dioxide is, what the temperature is, what the humidity is, how close is that to where it should be? Well, for an old house, it's actually pretty good. Okay, well, we can eliminate that as part of our health concern.
Risk
And
assessment. Yeah.
ultimately, with all this, it's got to be about the people living in the houses. It's that's what it's about at the end of the day. If we're not having healthy spaces for people to live in, that's the whole point of all this building science. It's about being healthy for people to live in.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah,
and and this is
absolutely.
a verification method that we say, okay, this house is healthy to live in. Well, that's great.
So how is the how are they how is the Tasmanian building industry, what are they doing to draw that air from the, because I would have thought not only is it like, well, it's meant to be dry air from the roof space, but it's you're saying it's often not dry air, which is not healthy from a mold proliferation point of view inside the building envelope and inside the roof. So you're bringing in humid air, you're potentially bringing in mold spores, but you're also bringing in dust and things from up there, right? Like, how is the air being brought into the home?
Well, in theory, there should be some filter on there, but it's like any of these systems. If you've got lots of mold in
Totally.
there, it's only a matter of time till the filter all clogs up, and if there's not the maintenance on it. But again, with a high performance home, and this is whether it's your roof space ventilation or your heat recovery system or whatever. If we're not maintaining our homes, those things will not perform as they should be doing.
Mm.
And even from a people's health point of view, and I've said this to people where we've done mold. There's a colleague of mine who does mold assessments, and I say, get yourself one of these Aranet meters. They're $300 odd dollars, temperature, humidity, dew point, carbon dioxide. Put them in your house. It helps you. It's a bit like the thermal camera story I told before. Once you've got that in your house, you can tell when you do this with your heating, when you do that with your drying, when you do that with your putting your washing out, cooking, you get a bit of a sixth sense about how your house is behaving and the things you can do as a homeowner rather than taking a guess. So for $200, $300 odd dollars, you go, okay, well, if I do this, do that, instead of having a guess as to how you feel, you've got some real metrics on it. And if you give people some guidelines, it's okay, well, if the humidity is above 70% for a little bit, maybe 80%, okay, we can live with that. If you're getting up to the 80s and 90s all the time, that's not great. If your temperatures are going below 15 degrees, we've got a problem. If your carbon dioxide is going above 1200 for any significant length of time, or thereabouts, 800 parts per million is the rolling average in the building code. People can understand how their own building works, and that, for a occupant of a house, that can be really useful for them to understand the do's and don'ts, or the effect of particular actions of how they use their house.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go and get my Aranet so I can show on the screen what it looks like. Just hold, please.
Yeah, I'd be interested to do, like we don't do many subfloors, they're mostly on slabs, but I'd be interested to do like a vapor barrier, like subfloor goes up, vapor barrier down, geofab, then just a gravel base. See if that has any effect on you got the roof on your house and the gutters, and that captures the water, and we put that in the pipe and we run that out of the. Yeah, we know how to do that, but I think people forget like the ground is like a porous material, so it's sucking in all that rain, and is that going to come back in through the footings back up under the subfloor and then permeate up in there?
Oh, no, absolutely. And I'm sort of having a bit of a play around with one up on the coast at the moment, and that's
Mm,
exactly that's exactly the thought process I'm going through,
mm,
because yeah, these subfloors are basically just mold factories, and that
mm,
balance between the balance between the temperature and humidity, and then when it comes down and cools down and it hits a dew point, it's it yeah. I don't think anybody really. Well, it's a lot of people probably don't have a handle on it. But the other thing too, and okay, not many new houses fit in that category, but how many existing houses are there out? There are squillions
mm,
of them out there that are all that's how they work. Um, yeah,
mm.
So
that's
would you
right.
say that building a subfloor, would you say, like, from a just a mold growth risk reduction perspective, if you could build a slab on ground as opposed to a subfloor, that would be the better way to do it? Better way to build? Like,
I would say
obviously some people
so.
don't
I
have a
think so
choice, but
because
is that the better way to reduce mold risk?
you're getting the benefit of a vapor barrier at the underside
Mm,
of the subfloor, and then like looks like we're going to insulated slabs, like we're seeing them more and more often.
mhm.
Yeah, I think it would be lower risk.
Well, it seems to
Oh,
stand to reason. Like, if there's no humid
yeah,
air under your subfloor, like if it's a slab, then it's not gonna, there's one less source, right?
no, and look,
Mm.
the other thing too, and Tim Law, uh, who now works for what's it called, RIC in Melbourne, he did some really interesting stuff on slabs, waffle pod slabs, because with the waffle pod slabs, if they're not detailed correctly, it's quite possible, and apparently can be fairly common, that water actually gets between the vapor barrier and the waffle pods. So then
Yeah, right.
the beams of your slab are actually sitting in water. So
Mm,
detailed correctly, absolutely. When was the last time you saw an ag drain or some sort of drainage around the edge of a waffle pod slab? And typically what
mm,
are they, 400 odd millimeters deep? They're sitting a good 200 millimeters um, below
mm,
the finished ground level. So if detailed correctly, probably. But I think the other side of it too is that, uh, as I said before, there's so much of this information we just don't have the answers to, and this is a really good way to do it. But again, if you look at the squillions of the squillions of houses out there with elevated subfloors with bearers and joists, which potentially have this problem. The existing building stock issue is very significant.
I actually was up in far north Queensland a couple of weeks ago, and I was staying in an Airbnb, and it was just a granny flat on the like next to a house, and I just took note of the subfloor ventilation because the people had lived there for a good 25 years, so the house was at least 25 years old, if not older. Subfloor, and it had a huge grill on the side of the subfloor, and I had a few of them, and I thought to myself, I'd love to stick a monitor under there and see, because the air up in far north Queensland is thick, and like they had large ventilation openings, but I was really interested to, I didn't have a monitor with me to pop under there, but I was really interested in what was actually going on in that subfloor in a completely different climate to what you guys are talking about, and equally, if not more, high risk.
And then what are our thoughts then on, like you're seeing more and more common people wrapping the subfloor. So you're giving those moisture sensitive materials a degree of protection. Yes, it's not covered by a cladding, but do you think that's building in a bit of robustness into the system? Because yes, it's a vapor permeable membrane, but the humid air has to diffuse through that vapor permeable membrane to then get to the pine, to the insulation.
Do you
Or
mean
am I just not
underneath the
thinking about
subfloor?
that right?
You don't mean down the side, you mean under? Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
getting
I
more and
mean
more
underneath.
inquiries about this. Yeah.
Because we wrap them, but like, is that?
Well, I feel like,
feel
sorry, you go.
No, I'm just like we're wrapping them. So is that adding a degree of protection? And like, if we do have the external air that is highly humid, do we care about that if it's wrapped?
Well, I think
I
it's
guess
definitely
that's my
adding.
question.
Yeah, it's definitely it's slowing down any movement of vapor into the subfloor and then into the conditioned space.
Yeah.
But my question is, should we be using the vapor barrier product rather than the vapor permeable product? Which way is the vapor drive going? There's the DA product, which is used up again in far north Queensland. Should we be using, if subfloors are getting to 100% relative humidity, should it be a vapor barrier product under there? And I've got a question in my inbox right now, actually, for a similar query. And it depends on a few different things, but it's an interesting progression of detailing. Clarence, what do you think?
I think that the other side too there is with the woofie, the woofie or any of the hygrothermal um, um, programs, it relies on accurate data. It will be interesting to see with some of these things, because if you take your woofie program, for example, it's talking about your temperature and humidity on the building, on the outside of the building, right? But what's happening under the subfloor might be significantly different to what's happening on the outside of the building. And look, I know and the basics about woofie, but I'm not pretending to be an expert on it. But it would be interesting if in the future some of this data could be plugged into woofie, and you have what's really happening in the building, what's really happening in the subfloor, what's really happening. So you've actually got 12 months of data, and okay, we can talk about average years and typical years and unusual years, etc. But it would be it may well be more accurate to have 1 year of real world data as what's happening in the subfloor, what's happening in the conditioned space, and then if it's possible to migrate those into woofie and then see what the real risk is. And
I would love to be able to do that with woofie.
well,
That would be so cool.
someone like Jesse Clark or Freya or Mark Bisbee would probably know, and there are other people out there as well who would be able to answer that question. But again, there's a whole thing with this whole thing with big data, and the big data basically, whether they're collecting metrics on what you're looking at on Facebook or what clothes you're looking at on Etsy, whatever. There's lots of it out there, and as far as the building industry goes, there's a lot of this that can be used for huge benefit for us. And it's just about having the people who are a bit more computer minded than me to crunch and put that into the relevant things to make it useful. And one of the things with woofie, and there's been a lot of research going on about particular products and climate zones and rainfall and what's included. And who knows, there may be the potential to actually include some of this data in particular scenarios to say what is happening. Doesn't need to be a vapor barrier, doesn't need to be a class 4 membrane, etc. And when we've got the data, that could be a lot more accurate potentially.
Mm.
And compared to years gone by, the ease of collecting data nowadays compared to 15 years ago, it is a completely different ballgame.
Do you guys feed any of your data to Jesse Clark or to anyone, or are you
Come
just
and
using
get it
it for
if you
your own
want it,
benefit?
Jesse.
I-
Come and
Come
get
and
it.
get it, mate.
Yeah,
I'll give it to you on a plate.
I think the thing is that it's a case of getting some builders on board and building scientists, designers, etc. on board, and then maybe have some structured data on it. And see, the other too is there a lot of people have these weather stations on their homes, so it's really sort of this. There's a big wide world out there of this data that could be used, and you look at how much the internet has changed as far as Airbnbs and Uber and things that could not exist before this. The internet revolution, and the same in building science. The potential for this to flow into more micro level analysis is potentially very big. I'm not the computer nerd who's up to doing that, but I'm sure there are people out there who will be able to answer that question. Darren O'Day, for example, could probably give a 3-hour explanation.
That's the thing about the real data is so you can't beat it. Like Wolfie's a model, right?
Yes.
So, and with models, like it's the same with weather. If like you get angry at the weatherman, it's like they don't have enough data
Predictive
inputs
only.
to monitor. Yeah, like so garbage in, garbage out, they say, don't they? So like if we can
That's
get some of
exactly
this
right with
real
Wolfie.
data back into the modelling.
And Sam,
like how much
another area that I've found always to be fairly, what's the word, of concern is this situation where you have a retaining wall, a waterproof retaining wall, a slab and a retaining wall, and then you have timber framing up against a retaining wall, well, a cavity, then your wrap, then your insulation, etc., and how that behaves in there, because if that fails, A, you don't see it, and B, it's very hard to get to. And look, I only had a situation, and it came up with a very, very positive result. But again, it's one of those things, these questions that years ago would have taken thousands of dollars to answer now could be very, very simple questions to answer, relatively simple questions to answer. And that business where you've got, particularly where you've got a cold interface or substrate and you're drawing relatively humid air with a high dew point against that relatively cold substrate, how that behaves, whether that be in a subfloor against a retaining wall. I think there are a lot of questions around that.
For sure.
And I just don't think a lot of people know. But the flip side to that is to get the answers is pretty darn easy.
Yeah, well, let's get into it. So let's show people how to get the answers, because I reckon there could be people listening. I've had lots of inquiries about monitoring systems and where they can be found, what brands, how they work, etc. So let's give the people what they want. Let's give them some information about what data logging software you guys use.
Let's give them what they want. That's it.
Yeah.
Give the people what they want. I love
You've
that
always got to
saying.
give the people what they want.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with just some simple equipment that I've got, and I use this to monitor indoor air quality. These guys are using equipment and they're monitoring inside cavities. I monitor my house. So this is called an Aranet 4. You can get it off of Amazon, maybe. I'll find a link and I'll pop it in the show notes as to where you can find it. It's a very simple battery-operated portable system. I take it with me everywhere just because I want to know what the humidity in the air is. I want to know what the carbon dioxide in the air is. So this tells you temperature, relative humidity, and carbon dioxide. At the moment, my lounge room is 1,025 parts per million and 42% relative humidity and 25.5 degrees. It's a little bit warm, it's dry, and the carbon dioxide is passable, but I actually have a door open, so probably higher than it should be because it's 500 parts per million outside. So yeah, I take this on planes. I took it in my car once. I had 3 teenage girls in my car, 4 teenage girls in my car. Over a 10-minute drive, the car got up to 5,000 parts per million because there was 5 of us in the car. So that's not going to kill anyone, but it goes to show how quickly air quality changes in small confined spaces when there's lots of people. So I've taken it to like conference halls, airplanes. The Airbnb I was in that I was telling you about was regularly up around 2,500 to 3,000 parts per million every day because it was very hot and humid outside and we had the air conditioner on. So everything was closed up.
What they say about
And
air quality monitoring, isn't it? It's like you just wish once you've done it, you wish you didn't.
yeah, I
Because you're
know.
like, oh,
Ignorance
okay.
is bliss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I also have this. I've got it unplugged at the moment. So this one's portable. The Aranet 4 is portable. This is called an Uhu. This is not portable. This is power, like it's plugs in. This one is Wi-Fi enabled. This one is Bluetooth. Aranet is Bluetooth. Uhu is Wi-Fi. So I can monitor what's going on in my house all the time using this. And this monitors 9 different things. So carbon dioxide, particulate matter, relative humidity, temperature, VOCs, a bunch of other things. I'll put some screenshots on the screen to show you an example of what it monitors. But it basically means that I get a pretty good idea of where my house is at 24 hours a day. And I just find it really, really interesting. I get alerts on my phone to say your house is getting a bit too humid, or it's getting a bit too dry, it's getting a bit too hot, it's colder than normal. And it sort of gives me a air quality index as well. So I just find it really interesting to track that data and learn a little bit about how the inside of my house is actually doing. So now over to you two. What programs and software are you using?
Get
You
them
go first,
nerds.
Sean.
Okay, let's nerd it up. So for indoor air quality monitoring, so we do that throughout. It's only something we've recently started doing throughout the new builds. When we do like low VOC paint, put the monitor in there, watch the VOCs go up or down or whatever. When the carpet comes in, you're like, holy shit, that is a lot of stuff in carpet. So go to instrument choice. The one that we have used is, oh no, or air quality monitor for TVOC, CO2, PM1, PM2.5, PM10, temp and RH, PCE, RCM-16. Get that one.
I don't know.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
I'll send you the link because it actually
All right.
doesn't have, it's by PCE Instruments.
Mhm.
But that is the one that we're using to monitor the houses as we're building them.
So
Especially
you're
when we get
gifting them
close
to your clients?
No, I keep that.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
and
you
then
just
we
pop it in there
vent.
while you're building it?
Yeah, once we get
Yep.
to once the joinery starts spray out, joinery starts going in, getting close to fit off, approaching handover, and we just ventilate the crap out of the houses basically. Like, because you watch the VOCs and that spike as you're bringing things in, open up all the windows and doors, let it ventilate out, and you can see that come down quite quickly because we're aiming to get to a good number before we hand the house over. In an ideal world, you just keep in the house for a month before you hand it over and ventilate the crap out of it. Try getting that one across the line. Say, hey, your house is finished, but I want to keep it for a month. Some people, yes. Most
You
people,
can't
no.
have it yet.
Yeah. So that is for air quality monitoring.
And what was the actual name of
And
that one,
then
Sean? Sorry, could you repeat the name of it? Like the short name?
It was PCE Instruments from Instrument Choice. I'll send you the link to the monitor.
Great.
And then we have I think it's called Protometer sensors that screw into they're the timber moisture content monitor ones that we've got from Cam Munro. So they're another sensor. That one is Bluetooth. So you're going to have to be close to that sensor to take a reading, unless you set yourself up with a Wi-Fi bridge and a Bluetooth. You could nerd out on that and put it on a network and pull the data that way if you wanted. But I just haven't nerded out that far yet. Ruby is the other sensors that we use. I'll send you the link to where to get them. We used to get them from Finland, but you can now get them inside Australia from this random caravan store online. Go figure, but they send them.
So Ruby is the networked one, right?
Yes, that. We put that one on the internet and then we can remote log in and look at that.
But you can have several, they network to each other.
So our last project that they still haven't got the internet yet because it's big drama with the NBN. So we haven't been able to get our sensor network up. But I think we're putting 10 sensors in that because it's like a 460 square metre home, subfloor, warm roof, massive truss spaces. So we're going to be putting them. And there's a lot, the way the house is constructed, there's a lot of different subfloor compartments because it's on the side of a hill. So it's stepping down. So we're doing a whole heap of different sensor positions to see how effective. We've got fans in one area of the house and no fans in the other. So see how effective fan ventilation is as opposed to just NCC standard cross ventilation.
So you're talking about ceiling
And
fans?
no, it's fans in the
Or those?
subfloor.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like a super quiet, super efficient fan. And
Yep.
it's just, basically screwed to the bottom of the subfloor. This particular subfloor, you can't get any ventilation on the back side of it because it's cut so deep into the ground. Got a big retaining wall and the house projects out this way from the hill. So you can't ventilate this side. So what we've done is basically put an intake fan on one side and an exhaust fan on the other and just trying to pull like an air circuit through that to see how.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, we'll monitor it and see if that works or see if it doesn't. And that is going to be monitored by the Ruby sensors, which, they are Bluetooth to basically a gateway router, and you connect that router to the internet, and then you can log in and see the Ruby data. And I think their batteries last for 3 years in the individual sensor, and the router's just hardwired. But I'll let Clarence, I have got one of the tether sensors, which if I was a builder getting into it and I don't want to do any setting up on networks, that's the sensor I could get because it operates off like a low G thing. But I'll let Clarence talk about that because he's dealt with those sensors a lot more than I have.
Yeah, so look, the two I'm most familiar with are the Aranet, and you've already gone over that, Jess, so I won't rehash what you've said with the Aranet. But a few things I will add with the Aranet is they're not reliant on an internet connection to work. So look, there's a particular job which is all a bit sort of under wraps at the moment, but we're looking at it's a remote area where internet doesn't exist. So we're looking at the people who are visiting that site. It's a remote area, sort of wilderness area, and we're looking at the people who are visiting that site to download on their phone, download the data, which will hold for 2 weeks. So that's one of the pros of the Aranet. And the thing you were mentioning about, the subfloor in Cairns, the beauty of the Aranet, you can go and leave it under the subfloor for 2 weeks or 2 days or whatever, and pull it back out.
I would have, but it was too big to fit in the grill. Like I
Right,
needed something smaller.
right. You just needed a big hammer. That's all you needed. That would fit that. But anyway,
They wouldn't have minded.
and the ones
Look, I
I'm
need to know
so
the
other
relative
than the
humidity
Aranet
under your
is
subfloor. You get it, right?
well, I'll just get a big hammer. No, not with an Airbnb. So that's the tether. I'm not paid by tether, but I think I've got 15 of these all around the place that move around. I'm a bit of a Luddite, a bit old school, and I do find these work fairly well. It says a battery life of 3 years, and I found that to be. I haven't found either have expired in the 3 years yet, so that seems to be fairly true. And the beauty of
Mm-hmm.
those is because they're relatively slim, right? So that's how thin they are there. What's that about? I've got 40 odd millimeters. They are 40 millimeters. They will fit in small cavities.
Mm-hmm.
Relies on what's called the Sigfox network, so it's like it's an internet type network. Now, if you're in a urban area, 9 times out of 10, provided you're not deep down in the subfloor, they'll work. If you're deep down in the subfloor or you're out, 20 k's out of town, you'll need a booster which will boost that signal. So that one there's the temperature and humidity one, but they also do one which has 9 parameters, which includes CO2, et cetera, et cetera. So most of mine are temperature, humidity, which gives temperature, humidity, but it also calculates dew point from those two
Mm-hmm.
parameters. And look, I think the other thing too with it is the output is easy to access, and it provides a lot of information as well. And I find it provides enough information that's not overwhelming. Well, enough information that's useful but not overwhelming to the point you can show it to a client and say, hey, this is what's going on, and they get it without having reams and reams of paper. And look, I've found them good. And I think the other thing too with any of these meters is you think, well, if they're going to be in a dirty subfloor or getting wet with 100% humidity, will they keep going? Well, I've had those ones in 100% humidity for weeks on end, and they still keep transmitting. And in the dirt, not in the dirt, but in dirty areas, it's they seem to do the job. So I've been pretty happy with them. But the Aranet's the other one for my particular application that. Particularly if you don't have internet access and you want to give that to someone, put in a particular area, see how it goes for a couple of weeks, it can be very handy too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the
And
Ruby and the
they're about
Aranet, they're the ones that you
$200.
can see from your laptop, right? They're the ones that are Wi-Fi enabled. And you
This
can
one,
log in whenever you want and have a look.
correct, and the platform that comes out is very good, and it's and look, I'm not familiar with what the Ruvi or the Uwu or other platforms are, but the 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 very interesting thing with the Tether one, there's Sean with the Ruvi one. Okay, yep.
On an
Wait,
app on
sorry,
my
what did I say?
phone.
Ruvi and Aranet, Ruvi and Tether.
That's how easy it is. You can do it on your phone, people. Like, it's
On your
not even
Oh
that
no,
phone.
look,
hard.
I'm not. I don't do apps, but anyway, I'm a bit old school. But come home and get on the screen and get the old magazines out and have a look. But the other thing too is that there's a subscription fee for the Tether. From
Mm.
what I've seen,
Yep.
the amount of data it
But not for
gives you
Ruvi?
is
No, there's this, like, if you want all of the datas for, like, you need a cloud, they want to pay you to store it in the cloud.
Right.
I'll
So you
get back
pay.
to you on I might just, so there's an upfront cost and then, but it's bugger all, the subscription.
Yep.
It's like, it's
and,
not
and
much,
look
but
at
I'll get all that into an email to
Okay.
you.
Thank
look,
you.
I think there are pros and cons with each one, but I suppose that what I would say as a takeaway for anyone listening to this is there are lots of options, and they're all relatively inexpensive. The outputs are relatively easy to work, and if you're a tech person, you'll probably find them very easy to work. And like as we were saying before, when you've got data that says, for example, your subfloor humidity is 100%, 80% of the time, it doesn't take much to convince people that what's in their best interests.
Yeah.
And there's a guy in ACT called Tom Hughes, and he did this very interesting retrofit with putting like a granulated fill in. It's on not Instagram. What's it called? LinkedIn. And he put this granulated fill in an old might have been double brick building, no, brick veneer. And he thought, well, there is a significant risk here of there being moisture in the wall because of putting insulation into. He's put a bundle of these sensors in the walls and said, okay, well, I know now, going through the first winter, that where I put them in, that the risk is completely manageable. So again, if you're doing something novel and you think, gee, am I really creating a drama in my building here for the sake of less than $1,000, you can sleep easy and go, yep, happy days. And
Yep.
in the chance it isn't right, you go, okay, well, I can take that out and modify that within that period and not be left with a disaster of a building, which is cheap.
I think it's an absolute no-brainer. So
Mm.
if you guys could recommend just one of the few that we've talked about today for every builder in Australia to install in their builds tomorrow, what would it be, Sean?
I would say the Tether. Even though I
Mhm.
only have one, I've got heaps of Ruvi. I think it's just like the ability that the Tether operates on its own network is like, I think that's got a lot of value, especially because builders have enough shit to do already and they want it to be easy. I love it, so
Yep.
I don't mind a bit of like messing around. I do think the Tether would be the most appropriate for people.
Mhm.
And look, I'm only
What do you
familiar
think,
with the
Clarence?
Tether, and I'm only familiar with
Yep.
the Tether and the Aranet. And look, I think the thing is, as Sean said, depending on the generation of the builder, some people are very tech sort of switched on, and others this is a reality. We've got employees and BAS statements and product, installation and
Yeah.
councils and banks and the last thing you want to be worried about is, setting up an interface between platform A and platform C and then
Mm.
but for the younger builders that they might be perfectly happy with that.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's something to factor in there as well. And look, just as an aside, in the training, when I did the training with Mark Dewsbury, and Sean's been involved with a lot of that as well, is I take the Aranet in there, and particularly if it's a venue that doesn't have mechanical ventilation, by the time it gets to 10 o'clock in the morning, I say, how's everyone feeling? Start to feel a bit drowsy, dragging their feet, eyes starting to close. Pull the Aranet meter out and guaranteed it'll be 1,800, 2,000 parts per million, and show it to them
Yep.
and say, let's open some windows. Open the window, the humidity comes down to 1,300 parts per million. How's everybody feel? Oh, better, 1,300
Mm.
parts per million. And that's a really powerful
Mm.
tool so people can actually see a number against how they feel. And so if that's just to do with
Totally.
carbon dioxide, when you're talking about all these other things, you can put a number to it. And the same with the blower door test. If you know after a while you say it has to 20 air changes an hour or 10 or 3 or whatever, you sort of know. You can look at a house when it's being wrapped and say, well, that's going to be between the 1.5 and 3 or between 6 and 10. And
I'm
it,
actually at that point where I could eyeball a house and be like,
that's right.
it'd be that
Once
easy.
you get used to these things, you can almost
Yeah.
you can get a bit of a sixth sense, but you can also put a number to it, and putting a number to it is
Yeah.
really useful. And look, the other thing I found interesting when I started 25 years ago, people would say, I'm a good builder. I'm a good builder. I do architectural work. I do $1 million houses, blah, blah, blah. But what were they measuring themselves against? They're measuring themselves against an opinion. Whereas these days, with this sort of stuff, how good is your house? Well, we've got the metrics. We've got the blower door tests. We've got the moisture content in the roof. We've got an R value. We've got all these things. So when you say, am I a good builder? You're not just giving your own opinion, you can put a number on it. And that's pretty special. And the pride that brings to a lot of people in the industry, instead of just their opinion, it's pretty powerful stuff. And I think there's a lot of pride in the industry. Matthew Carland and Sean and Zanetto's and a whole lot of other people who say, I'm really taking pride in, I can put a number on that and say, this is the real deal. And these monitors can go a long way to doing that.
Absolutely.
It's a good comparison to draw with the blower door, I think, because they were, I built you an airtight house. How do you know? Oh, I tested it. I'm like, I built you a house that's not going to rot. How do you know? Well, I tested it. Put a
The
monitor
relative
in.
humidity is 55%.
Yeah. I know your windows aren't going to leak. How do you know? Because I put a hose on and tested it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's easy. It's pretty easy, really. Like,
and from an health point of view, if you've got an MHRV or something, well, doesn't need adjustment. Well, put your sensor in there and, okay, well, the humidity's getting up too high. Does it need balancing or adjusting or whatever? Super useful tool. And look, I remember years ago, Mark Dewsbury's got these things of when he and Tim Lawn up the northwest coast of Tasmania, 10 years ago with boxes and power supplies and cables and crawling up on ladders to get, one lot of data. When I worked in the science area years ago, same deal, boxes and cables and it was, and that was just to get the data. Then you had to process the data, and nowadays it all comes on the phone on one of them. It's an absolute completely different universe, and people don't appreciate it.
One thing I would like to monitor that I'm not is, you might know a bit more about this, Clarence, but the cavity ventilation, like the wall cavity ventilation, monitoring the amount of flow that we're getting in there, and I suppose you can look at that through relative humidity and moisture content, like it's dry, so who cares how many litres per second it is? It's dry enough. But just, because it's interesting, we go with on the roof, we're doing we're doing non-balanced ventilation to get intake at the eaves and exhaust at the ridge. But you look at data for walls, I think from New Zealand, and they're saying a 50-50 split is like 50-50 intake top and bottom, intake and exhaust top and bottom is the most effective way to ventilate a wall, which is different to the roof.
I can't answer that specifically, but as a little bit of an aside and a little bit of an answer to that is that there's an electrician down here, Dave Corbett, and there are a lot of other electricians who are probably into this stuff who are...
Yeah, he's great. He's really good.
And so you might have, let's say you've got a ventilation system in your subfloor or behind a retaining wall or whatever, and if you've got the monitor in there, and I've actually built these into walls never to see the light of day again, but you can then adjust your ventilation system to deal with that. And the ability to do that remotely these days is very significant. And the electricians who are good with it will have all this remote stuff to be able to come and put the numbers into whatever it is, see what the humidity is inside and outside. And that's another thing I'm having a play with a few people is some stuff regarding the ventilation, because as you sort of alluded to, Sean, is this issue of how much ventilation we get in there and the structure of the ventilation, and particularly in some of these humid climates. And Villy from ProClimate did an interesting post probably 18 months ago about what happens in Sydney when we get whatever the La Nina, El Nino, when it's a very high humidity, and you're pulling this air in that's got a dew point of 18 degrees and thinking you're doing it a favour, and it's actually incredibly wet air.
Mm.
it's very hot and the humidity anyway, but the dew point's very high and it might be higher than what the cavity is that you're drawing it into. And this assumption, if we just pull more air in, it'll be good. Well, maybe not. If it was hardwood framed
Mm.
30 or 50 years ago, it doesn't matter. But once we're talking about pine and LVL, a different ballgame. And the
Yep.
ability with sensors and this smart technology to manage that, it's a game changer. You just need people who are a bit more smart with computers than what I am. People like Philly.
Well, for my 2 cents worth, the recommendation that I would make is to take one of these babies everywhere you go. Now, I think it's gone high because I lay it down on my table. Like, I think the sensor is on the back and I laid it down on my table, so it's peaked. That's not actually accurate. It updates every 5 minutes and it's portable. You can put it in a roof space. You can put it behind a wall if you've got like a little, like you can just carry it around with you everywhere you go. And it's very easy. It's quick feedback. So I love the Aranet. But here is an example of that Airbnb I was in. This is the week I was in it. It was red for the entire time.
Wow.
So it was the lowest it got
dioxide?
was about 1,1300 and the peak was over 3,000 parts per million at this particular Airbnb. So maybe
That's
I should send them
wild,
that
isn't
screenshot.
And
Put that in
look,
the review.
as a novel sort of thing, and this is the sort of stuff that was happening during COVID. People were going, oh, we're feeling sick, oh, we're feeling drowsy, whatever. Let's just say, as a bit of a sideline, let's say you're a teacher in your classroom, right? And your kids are getting ratty at 11 o'clock in the morning. Every morning at 11 o'clock, the kids are getting ratty. I reckon probably at least a proportion of the time, if they put that Aranet on, they go, the kids are getting ratty because it's getting to 2,000 parts per million. Open the windows, and it's not a behavioural issue. It could just be an air quality issue.
I've thought
And
about sending mine to school with my kids, but I'm too scared they'll lose it.
But
So
for all you
haven't
know,
risked it.
these classrooms are up to 2,500 parts per million carbon dioxide, and the kids are just going a bit wonky because the air quality's crap. And if the carbon
There's actually
dioxide's
another
high,
really cool. Sorry.
if the carbon dioxide's high, then, the viruses and the PM10s and everything else that goes with it is more than likely going to be high as well.
There's actually a really cool monitor, another one that we haven't mentioned yet, called Birdie. It's Scandinavian. Have you guys heard of it?
No.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
It's literally uses the canary in a gold mine like theory, and it's literally a bird. It's like in the shape of a bird, and you stick it on the wall. And if the carbon dioxide I think they've set it at 1,000 parts per million, but I believe I heard somewhere they were going to reduce it to that 800 you were talking about earlier, Clarence. But if the it's for schools, deliberately designed for primary school classrooms, and it's this bird, and if the air quality, if the carbon dioxide gets above 1,000 parts per million, the bird dies.
Yeah, right. Now,
And then
just listen to
they
the
open up the
I'll have to check.
windows and it reduces, and then
Yeah.
the bird comes back to life. So the kids
Yeah,
can be
right.
like, oh, the bird's dead. Let's open up the windows. And
Open the
it sort
windows.
of creates a bit of fun around it. But
Yep.
education,
Yeah.
I thought that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah. Now, I do have to check. That actually may be 850 parts per million in the National Construction Code. I have to check. I think it's 850 parts per million averaged over 8 hours. But for people who are listening, look, it's around that 800. It's either 800 or 850.
Yeah. All right, guys, it's time for the last question. You know what it is. It's the same question I ask everybody at the end of every episode. Out of everything that you've learned in your careers about monitoring buildings, existing and new, what have you learnt? What do you want the listener to know? What's the one thing?
I would say don't assume that a well-built building is always performing how you want. And the way to get the answer is very, very simple and very, very cheap.
Sean? Oh, you're on mute, mate.
What a podcast noob. I can't believe I did that. Sorry. That it's just so easy to get the information. Like, it's very easy and it's very cheap. There's not a high bar that you need to step over to get to this information. It would take you an hour to set it all up. That's like putting it in your car, unpacking it from the thing. Then you go to site, you jump up the manhole, you screw it to the side of the truss, you come back at your 12-month defect period, pull it back out, you got it, you go on the next one, rinse, repeat. It is such a low bar to step over if you want to get some clarity and just some like assurance of what you're doing is going to be durable. That's the big thing for me, is is this thing going to last? Because someone's paid me a fair chunk of money to build this house, and I want to make sure that it's there for a fair while.
Brilliant. Head to the show notes. And all the links will be there to all of the different products that we've talked about today and resources. So if you want to join these two in their nerdy building science world and reduce your risk, definitely go and check out those products.
And when it's late at night, instead of looking at Instagram or Facebook, you can go and check your monitors, and that'll sort of,
and you will get addicted to doing that.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jess.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. I've been asked a lot about this topic, so thank you so much for spending the time and sharing your knowledge. It's really good.
No worries at all.
My pleasure, as always, Jess. Thank you. See you, Sean.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
That is all for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. There'll be another episode in a fortnight, so if you would like to listen into the types of conversations that I have all the time, please subscribe on your chosen platform. Rate the show, leave a comment, whatever you like, share with your friends and family. I'd love for you to spread the word about the Building Sciology Potty. There's a link in the episode description where you can head to a landing page, and there are some show notes there with relevant links and a full transcript of the show as well, and also links to my socials. So if you're not already, I'd love for you to follow along there too, as I share lots of building science and building biology tips. Thanks again. I'll be back in 2 weeks, so until then, happy healthy building.